that we have today is also equally special. We have a really cool program with one of the local schools. I'll let them share more about that later, but we are all working with the kids today. The Reef serves as an education and outreach facility, a teaching aquarium for both K-12, but also a lot of on-campus programs as well and courses. And we use that environment behind Zoe a lot of times in the days before the Kanono. And we look forward to getting out there in our new normal. But the gem of our program is, of course, the aquarium, the Reef itself. So Zoe, why don't we head on in? All right, and the tank that Zoe's pointing at right now is one of our key tanks. This is the SBC LTER tank, or the Santa Barbara Coastal Long-Term Ecological Research Network. The SBC, or all of the LTRs, are funded by the National Science Foundation. And if we pan to the left, you'll see our MCR LTER tank, which features tropical organisms. We do research in Moire. And Ashley, if you do know Michelle Johnson, you could ask her more about that, because she spent at least one summer there as part of her research. Really cool program going on. Ecology happens in long-term cycles, decades to centuries to millennia. And she is great. And so the National Science Foundation recognized the significance of this, and most research funding cycles are 3 to 5 years. And of course, ecological processes occur over longer periods. So we're really proud that UCSB has 2 major LTER sites, the tropical one there of Moire, and then back to the temperate one, Zoe. Yeah, the beautiful kelp forests found off of our coast and the rocky reefs that they require to grow. And I think with that, I am going to sign off and let you guys enjoy the reef and all the cool things that Zoe's going to show you and share about. So like I said, hit them up with questions, Ashley. Enjoy the time, and when things open up, swing by the reef and say hi.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thank you, Scott.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right. So just like Scott said, we're here to give you a little tour of the reef. I know a lot of us aren't really allowed back on campus for now, but if you have any questions or if you have any animals that you really want to see, feel free to just type it in the chat and we'll do our best.
Okay, so there are a lot of really fun creatures in here. As Scott said, there is this tank, which is one of my favorite tanks, the tropical tank. At the Reef, we talk about 3 flavors of water, and that is polar, tropical, and temperate. Temperate being the nice in-between Goldilocks, this is all right moment. This is a tropical tank. I like it a lot. It has one of our favorite, most famous fish in it. Let's see if I can find him. This is Clyde. He is one of the most animated fish at the Reef. He is a Stars and Stripes pufferfish. And he just got fed today, so he's a little excited right now. But I like this tank in particular because I'm currently doing research with the Berkey Pile Lab on campus. Berkey Pile's lab is looking at how temperature changes in the ocean affect coral reefs. And because rises in temperature can cause coral bleaching, he's doing a lot of work seeing in how coral reefs can become more resilient to heat waves. as well as looking at how they can come back from recent bleaching events. My project that I'm working on in particular deals with herbivorous fish, so ones that eat algae, and how they play a role in making sure that coral stays dominant on reefs instead of becoming algae run. So that is being done in Moire. And I'm going to swing on over here. We also got more research going on in these white tanks back here. Gretchen Hoffman just became the new director of the Marine Science Institute, and she does a lot of work in climate science. And we are lucky enough to be working with a PhD student in her lab, Sochi Claire, looking at the these snails, which are called Kellet's whelks. These ones are out today because they just got fed. But this research is really important because Kellet's whelks are slowly becoming a new type of shellfish that we are able to fish and consume. And it is also really important because their populations grow so quickly. We are looking at how marine heat waves are influencing their larval young. So on the bottom here, you might be able to see the H's drawn onto the tanks. That represents the conditions of a heat wave seen in Santa Barbara, which is around 20 degrees Celsius, about 68 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit. And on top, we have the cold treatment snails at what is normal for the rocky reefs out on our coast. So these snails are living in about 13 to 14 degrees Celsius water, which is about 60 degrees Celsius. And the temperature is really important because some of our whelks in the reef are laying these sachets full of eggs. So you can see them, they're all along here, and then they're all along the glass here. What's crazy is that these little sachets are filled with at least 2,000 eggs. And so with them being so small, temperature changes are able to affect them in ways that we are still trying to figure out, which is why this project is so crucial to understanding. So those are some projects going on right here. We also have undergrads participating in different research projects. Paul in particular is doing work with a local elementary school, focusing more on the education front of the reef. If you want to go into that, Paul.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so the Reef is the research experience and education facility. So we do a lot of like educational programs with P through 20, like Scott said earlier. So one of the projects that we've been doing this past year, and I think last year as well, it's with Harding University Partnership School in like downtown Santa Barbara area. And yeah, the school's like partnered with UCSB's Graduate School of Education. So they and the Reef are kind of working with them to develop like their own anthology. So the kids are doing like these writings about our maritime community. Yeah, so it's all about communicating marine science and improving science literacy in students. It's a really unique program, and it was funded by, I think it was the Young Authors Grant, which is like a state grant given to the school. Yeah, so we actually like just met with them earlier today to work more on their writings, which is really fun.
And it's really fun because Jessica, Paul, and I are all on that program. So get to see them every week and participate with 4th through 6th graders writing about our beaches, our harbor, our watershed, and our channel. And like Paul said, it brings the community closer together and raises more awareness and science literacy at a younger age, which I think is really important. And I would have loved being at their age. So it's a really cool program. Hopefully once the anthology is out, we are able to share it with you guys. Other than that, we got some really cool creatures going on in the reef right now. And one of my favorite was just seen out of the shell. And he's eating snacks right now. So this is Forrest. And Ashley, if you have any idea what kind of animal he is, or specifically what kind of species he is, I would love to know your guesses in the chat.
And actually, Ashley, I can enable the allow to talk function for you since we just have a smaller audience. So if you choose to, if you think it's easier or quicker to communicate with us by unmuting, feel free to do so. But if you find it more comfortable for you to just type in the chat, you're also free to do that as well.
Yeah, that's pretty close. So you can't, let me see if I can get a better view of his body. So Forrest is our resident California spiny lobster. And as I mentioned before, today was feeding day. So we dropped in some mussels for him, and those are his favorite things to snack on. So that's what he's doing right now. Forrest is one of the largest lobsters that I've ever seen. And because lobsters don't have skeletons, they actually have exoskeletons. They're able to molt every year. So I'm gonna walk over here and show you his molts. So this one is Forrest's molt. You can see how big he is a lot better, especially compared to one of the smaller lobsters that we have in the reef. That molt is about, Jessica, how would you say that molt is?
Sorry, my internet cut out for a second. Could you repeat that?
Yeah, how big do you think this molt is?
I think overall it might be about 25 inches, I would say.
Yeah, so it's pretty big.
Yeah. Because when these lobsters molt, they grow. So it's a lot like when snakes shed their skin because they get a little bit too big for them. So then they have to shed that outside in order to like fit into a new skin. So lobsters do the exact same thing where their exoskeleton gets a little bit too small for them as they're growing. So then these guys shed or molt once a year. Oh, I see we have another attendee. Welcome, Cindy. We're just taking a little tour of the reef. Right now we are looking at our famous lobster and his most recent molt. So like I said, they molt about once a year. These guys molt maybe around September, October-ish. So his molt's pretty recent. And with every molt, their carapace, which is what we call that front half of their molt, grows about 1/8 of an inch. And we know that their, well, we measured this one, and this carapace measures about 10 inches. So this kind of involves some quick math. If you guys want to go ahead and try and guess how old Boris is. So the carapace right now measures 10 inches, and we know that they grow 1/8 of an inch with every molt. And they molt once a year. So we'll give you guys a few seconds.
you go. There's a lot of numbers to remember, so I typed it out for you.
Yes, Ashley's correct. So Boris here is 80 years old. So he is probably the deepest gaucho that we have here at the reef.
So Boris is our old man lobster. He has been around for a very long time, and because lobsters are pretty resilient, he has the capability to last for a really long time. But unfortunately, in the wild, sometimes their molds can be too heavy on them and they can be crushed, and that can result in them not living so long. So I'm going to flip the camera back to the tank with Boris in it, because there are a couple more cool creatures in here. So right in front of Boris is this beautiful shark. We also have another one back there. These are very local. All animals in these temperate tanks are local to the Santa Barbara community. And I wanted to ask if anyone knows what kind of shark this is. Let me see if I can get a better view for you guys.
Yeah, while we're looking at the sharks, we'd love to get to know you guys more. So, Cindy, what class are you? And like, what was your major at UCSB?
Oh, wow.
Awesome. Yeah.
That was quite recently. And Cindy, are you still in Santa Barbara, or where are you now geographically? Nice. That's cool. So welcome to the Reef. This right here, if anyone didn't guess, this is a swell shark. We have two species of swell sharks at the Reef. Those are our two adult swell sharks. We also have some juvenile ones here. They're like little sea puppies. They're super sweet. And then I'm going to take you guys over here. This is our baby shark tank. And we have a smaller one right over here. And right next to it, right there, is our second species of shark. If anyone has any guesses as to what kind of species that is, I'm going to give you a side profile because that might help a little bit. So you can't really see it right now. He moved a bit, but there's like a little white tip right there that looks like a little pointy, something horned. If anyone has any guesses as to what kind of shark this is, please let us know in the chat. Paul, do you know what type of shark this is?
Yeah, so this is a horn shark. And you, like Zoe said, there's like that little protrusion next to in front of their fin. Yeah, but that's actually not why they're named horn sharks. If you look at like their head, they have these two little bumps And it's because of those that scientists named it a horn shark.
And you can see those little bumps right here on this guy.
And then in this tank, I think I saw some shark eggs as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Big Mama's still here. Let me go, I'll zoom on over here real quick.
And those eggs that Zoe was just showing us, those are all laid by Big Mama still. So she's still having babies.
Yeah, so she's in here. She's still alive and well. So let me go back. So these are the swell shark eggs laid by Big Mama. And they're very beautiful. Does anyone have any guesses as to what people might call them just based on what they look like?
I have a quick poll for that one that I can launch right now. If you guys want to take a guess as to another nickname that we have for swell shark eggs. And we'll give it 5 more seconds. Yeah, so somebody said mermaid's purses, and that's correct. So their nicknames are mermaid's purses because I'm guessing they look like mermaid's purses. And we actually don't have any in the reef right now, but we used to have a horn shark egg, and those look way different, but I think they look pretty gnarly. They kind of look like screws where they have like the little spiral on the outside. So those look very different, but they are also shark eggs nonetheless.
And does anyone have any guesses as to what the gestation period is for sharks?
Or how long it would take for the sharks to emerge from their eggs.
Mhm.
I think about a year ago when Big Mama just started laying eggs, we used to hang them up in the back tank where the white tank that Zoe showed us earlier was at. So they
Yeah.
actually used to be able to hatch while we were still there. So that's kind of a hint. So it's not too long.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that all of these juvenile sharks came from those eggs.
They did.
Yes. So those are our sharks. They're really fun to watch grow, especially since we have Big Mama still laying eggs. I'm gonna switch gears a bit to this tank. So the Reef is a touch tank aquarium. And if you guys are here in person, we would be able to bring you here and let you guys hold different types of animals. These 2 tanks predominantly are touch tanks. This one is filled with a bunch of sea stars. And I'm gonna show you guys a really funny looking one right now. So classically, sea stars have about 5 legs, but in this case, this one has 6. And does anyone know why or how a sea star can have 6 legs? Or you can see right there under the sea cucumber, that one has 4 legs. So my question to you guys is, why do you think sea stars can have varying leg numbers? Jessica, why do you think this one has 6 legs and that one has 4 legs?
So the sea stars that have 6 legs are usually just because of genetic mutations. So they have an extra leg. Whereas the one that Zoe was pointing at earlier, the one with 4 legs, it just unfortunately lost a leg somehow. But the super cool thing about sea stars is that they're able to regenerate their limbs. So if we give that guy maybe like a few months, maybe a few years, it'll be able to completely regrow its missing leg. So it'll be back to having 5 legs again. And we
Yes.
don't have any in the reef right now, but I think the sea star that's able to grow the most number of legs is the sunflower sea star. And that one can have like up to 24 legs. So it's not always like the stereotypical 5 legs. There's definitely other species out there that are able to grow way more, which is pretty
Yeah, so that sea star in particular is a bat star, as Paul mentioned in the chat, and they come in a varying amount of colors and patterns. So that one I was holding up was red. This one's purple and white. This one is always a fan favorite. It looks like a koi fish with all the spotting and the colors. So they come in a bunch of different colors and they're all very beautiful. Today was feeding day and I'm going to show you guys this one. So does anyone have any idea how sea stars eat? This is a little hint right here.
And just for reference, we are looking at the underside of that sea star.
Yes. So once I flip it over, this little fleshy white part is exposed. Here's a better view of it. So does anyone have an idea what that is? Let me see if I can find one.
Ashley guessed that it was the mouth, which is true.
Yes.
So it's
Oh,
the white fleshy parts coming out of its mouth. And we know that these guys, as Zoe mentioned earlier, were eating a little earlier. So that white fleshy bit that's coming out of its mouth is actually the sea star's stomach. And the way they eat is that they actually throw up their stomachs out of their mouths, like we just saw. But one of their favorite things to eat is mussels. So what they do is they kind of shove their stomach into the mussels, and then they'll release all of these digestive enzymes and digestive juices. And then once that mussel is all liquidy and digested, the sea star will pull its stomach back. So all of the sea star's digestion is external.
so this is where their mouth is, and that's where their stomach comes out. And then all along their legs, there are little, let me see if I can get them to come out. If you look really, really closely at the top, those fibrous hair-like wispy things coming out of their feet, those are their tube feet. So they have thousands of tube feet all along their legs, and that's what they use to stick onto things, to walk around, move around, to find their prey. And right here, let that one go. Right here, that's a clump of mussels that we dropped in earlier. So all the sea stars are gathering around it, hoping to get something to eat. And also in this tank, we have this guy. See if I can pry him off. Okay. We have this guy. And this is the red sea urchin. We currently have 2 types of sea urchin at the reef. We have this red one and a purple one that are outside on the back deck right now. I can try to find some later. But just like the sea star, the sea urchin also has its mouth on the underside of it. So there it is right there. Kind of looks like an eye. And if I hold it in water for a bit, you'll be able to see things that look like its spine, but are just like the sea star, a lot more wispy, more hair-like, and those are the sea urchins 2 feet, which they use to move around as well. And these guys are in the same family as the sea stars. See if their 2 feet come out. Sorry about the glare, but like right here, if I move it gently, you can see thinner, wispy strands, and that is a sea urchin's 2 feet. I'm gonna let that one go. And sea urchins love eating kelp. If their populations run unchecked, they can devour a whole kelp forest in a very small amount of time. So their predators are really important for keeping our kelp forests healthy and thriving. I'm gonna move over to this tank now. Also part of our touch tank, we've got some sea stars in here. And if I can get the glare to go away, we've got this big reddish pink shell. And does anyone know what type of animal that is? There's another one up here. Oops. Paul, do you know what kind of animal that is?
Yeah, so what we're looking at is a red abalone. So it kind of just looks like a rock with some pink stuff on it, but it's actually a type of sea snail. Yeah, so abalone, you might have heard of them because they are eaten and farmed in some places. And a while back, they were overfished. So some species of abalone, like the white abalone, became reproductively extinct in the wild. So we have a program with UC Davis that what's the term? Cultivates white abalone, and then we re-release them into the wild and hopefully get their populations back up.
Yeah, so we are working, as Paul said, with UC Davis on the white abalone captive breeding program, and that we wait for the abalone to come of reproductive age, which does take a while. They do grow a bit slowly, but once they are able to reproduce, we are able to take the new progeny and put them out in the wild so they are able to reproduce and start building up the population once again. As he said, we have the red one here, we have the white ones in the back right now, and we also have some black abalone. So we got 3 types of abalone in the reef. In addition to the other sea snails in here, we got more Swell. These ones are out of their shells right now. Swell are carnivorous snails that are usually we feed them anchovies and they seem to love that. And these, once again, are the animals that Sochi Claire is working in the Hoffman lab with. I think someone wants to say hi. Oops. We've got our sharks swimming around. All the animals are pretty awake right now since they just got fed, which normally hasn't happened for our last couple of webinars, so this is a treat today. Like going back here, we can see Boris over there. We have smaller spiny lobsters in this tank as well. Sometimes the kids, when they're in here for programs, they want to show how cool they are, and they always ask to hold the spiny lobsters in this tank. I'm going to try to grab one. So this is a spiny lobster. I'm going to put it back really soon, but I just wanted to show you guys that they have spines on their tails, which is why they're called spiny lobsters. And as soon as I place it back into the water, it's probably going to flick its tail backwards. And that is how they get away from predators. So they swim backwards. I'm going to put it back right now. You'll be able to see it's curling its tail back. And oh, there it is. Now he's back down there. But usually when people want to pick up the spiny lobsters, they flick their tail backwards and inwards because it curves inwards to swim backwards away from their predators. And yeah, that's why they're called the spiny lobsters, because of those little spines on them.
Yeah, you might have noticed that it doesn't have the big claws that we usually see on lobsters. So the spiny lobsters live on the west coast, and then the ones with claws are actually all from the east coast.
Yes, and these guys are not, I don't think they're as sweet as the East Coast lobsters.
Yeah, that's correct. So, like the stereotypical lobsters that we think of are typically the Maine lobsters, right? The ones with the giant claws. And I learned this yesterday. The really cold temperatures up in Maine actually allows the lobsters to store more sugar in their muscles. So that kind of contributes to them having the sweeter meat. So that's probably why they're farmed more.
So that's back over here to the sea stars and show you guys these big guys. So we have multiple species of sea stars at the reef. The one I showed you guys earlier was a bat star. I'm gonna try to get these guys. Oh, there we go. This is another species of sea star we have on the reef. So you can see it's pretty giant. It's really not eating anything right now, but this is a spiny sea star. And you can see its 2 feet are a lot more pronounced because it is a lot bigger and a lot heavier. It's currently sticking to my hand right now, which is always fun. But what's really cool about these guys, and what I learned from Jessica when I was first interning at the reef, is that due to gravity, if you hold them like this, the bottom half of the sea star gets a lot more fleshy. So if I hold it by here, you can see that the spines are a lot less pronounced, whereas up here, the spines are protruding more so than the bottom. And that is because sea stars have a hydrovascular system. So instead of having blood like us, they're just filled with water. And yesterday we had a bat star squirting out water through the middle part. Hold on. We got one hand, the middle part right here, and that's just how they regulate how much water is in their bodies. And that brings me to the next hydrovascular organism that we have in the reef. Let me see if I can find it. Oh, it's right here. This guy. Anyone have any idea what this is?
I see that one's tensing up a little.
Yeah.
Oh, and he's stuck on some muscles.
Yep. I think it might have been eating.
Maybe. Does anybody in the audience have a guess as to what that is? Yeah, Ashley said that was a sea cucumber. That's correct. So sea cucumbers, sea stars, and sea urchins, which we looked at earlier, are all related. They're all part of the phylum called echinoderms, which literally translates to spiny skin, right? Like echinoderm. So these guys all have spiny skin. Well, the sea cucumber just looks like it has spiny skin because I don't know if you guys have held one before, but those are pretty squishy.
Yes. And so I don't know if you guys saw earlier, but before I picked it up, it was a lot more elongated. It was a lot more flexible, kind of like a slinky, but now it's a lot more firm to the touch and it's shrunk up. And when they're stressed out, they tend to tense up and take in a lot of water. Sometimes they squirt out the water, and that way they can become more gelatinous, if you will. But Paul, what's your favorite fun fact about a sea cucumber?
Yeah, so like we see right now the cucumber's a little stressed because Zoe just picked it up. So it's holding in all of its water. But when it's super stressed, like if it got bitten, it can actually expel all of its guts and shoot itself away from the predator. And then, yeah, in like 2 weeks or so, they regrow all of their guts, so they're fine.
So that's a pretty gnarly defense tactic that they
Mhm.
have. I definitely would be confused if I was a predator trying to get at a sea cucumber and all of a sudden all its guts were squirted out. So that is the tour of these touchings. If we come over here, this tank is filled with whelks and the whelk eggs that are super important. They're all along this coast right here. We've got swell shark, juvenile swell sharks, and this guy right here. Does anyone have any idea what this is? This is where Nemo lives.
Yeah, it's a little difficult to spell.
So these are anemone. And if you've ever gone tide pooling on Campus Point or down at Sands or Devs, when it's low tide, anemone are all over the beach, which are really cool to see. And if you can see, when I was sticking my finger near the tentacles earlier, they kind of stick to my finger. They feel really sticky. So that is them trying their defense mechanism against me. So basically, they have toxins in them that sting fish, which is why in Finding Nemo, only the clownfish were able to withstand that, and other fish weren't. So this guy was trying to sting me, but our skin is way too thick for that to penetrate. And it just feels like some sticky, like a sticker on your finger when you touch it.
Yeah, so the sea anemones have, like, all along their tentacles, they have little harpoons lining their tentacles, which are called nematocysts. And then they're kind of, they respond to touch. So whenever Zoe was touching it, or if it were one out in a tide pool and a fish were to swim by, then it would actually release the harpoons and it would shoot whatever it was stinging it. So, like Zoe said, our skin is a little too thick for it to really hurt. But if we were a fish, if you guys have eaten fish before, you might know that their skin is particularly thin. You would most likely be like stunned, and then you would become the anemone's dinner. But there is one fish that Zoe mentioned, the clownfish, and they actually produce a special mucus that surrounds their skin and that protects them from being stung. So they have like a symbiotic relationship with the sea anemones, where one provides food and then the other provides like a home.
So we got a ton of anemone in here. I'm going to bring you guys over to this tank right now to look at one of my favorite creatures in the reef. Let me see if I can find him. There he is. Anyone know what this funny looking guy is? Kind of looks like a scary dinosaur. So this is our California Moire Eel, and its little beady eyes and its little mouth. Their eyes are really bad. Their eyesight's really bad. So they hunt primarily based on their sense of smell. And this guy, you can see it opening its mouth, has two sets of jaws, one set in his mouth, which he keeps opening and closing, and another set of jaws in the back of his throat that kind of like jumps out once the eel finds a predator. He is one of my favorite creatures in the reef. He's just kind of hanging out. We have a couple more minutes left, so if you guys have any requests of animals you'd like to see, any questions, doesn't have to pertain to the reef, feel free to ask in the chat. Otherwise, Paul, Jessica, do you guys have any creatures you want to see before we leave?
Let's go back to the tropical tank. I think the colorful fish are pretty neat to look at.
Yes. So we've got Clyde up here. We are supposed to be possibly getting some new tropical fish soon, as well as some coral, which is very exciting. They said that is Clyde, and then we have some of our clownfish over there.
Clyde seems interested.
Yes. But I'm super excited to get coral because they're such interesting creatures to me. They're in a mutualistic relationship. So coral itself, as you can see on this insert, these are not real coral, but they're very colorful. And when you think of coral reefs, you think of all the colors. So corals are actually like transparent. They don't have a color to themselves. They don't look like this normally without their symbionts, which give them the beautiful varying colors that you guys see here. So I'm super excited to get some. And the reason why we have coral bleaching events is because when the heat rises too much in the ocean, corals freak out and they expel all their symbionts, and that makes them white. So it looks like they're bleached. And like I mentioned earlier, a lot of the research going on at the Moire Coral Reef, LTER, is looking at the rehabilitation of those corals and seeing if there are any specific type of symbiont that can help them be more resilient to heat waves, as well as seeing how long it takes for a coral to regain all the symbionts. So there's Clyde. Clyde has a beak, if you guys can see. He has two front teeth right there that are pretty pronounced. And usually when we feed him, he gets little sand fleas, which are like little sand crabs that file down his teeth so they don't get too long or too sharp. Then we got a butterfly fish right there. So I'm gonna start heading back outside because our time is almost up. Does anyone have any last minute questions that we can answer? I'll take you guys back out to Campus Point.
If you guys have any questions about campus in general, you guys can feel free to put those in the chat as well. I know a lot of us haven't been able to go back to campus for a while, especially with recent events. Like, I definitely miss campus.
If not, thank you so much for coming, even though, oh, sorry. Let me turn this around. Thank you so much for coming. We do have a lot of programs that we have going on, even though the reef is closed right now. We're doing a lot of educational outreach as of the moment. So if you have any teacher friends who are interested in looking for a fun educational program, we can have Jessica put the links in the chat. We are also working on the virtual reef that Paul is focusing on. That's our YouTube channel, and we'll be putting educational videos there. And we might be bringing back Open Door virtually, so it'll be this kind of format where we take you around the reef and show you guys what kind of creatures we have going on living in the reef. So look out for that. But otherwise, thank you so much for coming. It's been an honor hanging out with you guys, and I'm so happy that I could take you guys into the reef. Hopefully in the fall we open up back again and you guys can come and visit in person. So thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful Thursday night. Have a wonderful weekend, and we will see you soon.